Welcome to the high school diploma, a key to successful transition. We're going to give Vicki and Sue a moment longer to sort their background, and our participants a moment to come on in. Thank you so much, DJB Diamond, for the music. We really appreciated having that, get people pumped up for our session. Yeah, just give people a moment. For those of you that have just arrived, this is the high school diploma, a key to successful transition. It'll be presented by Sue Sawyer and Vicki Shad. I'm absolutely thrilled to be a moderator for this breakout session. As a teacher myself, whenever I had an important IEP meeting, I'd be Googling Sue's name and finding out the most latest presentation that she had shared, so I had useful tools to help me advocate for my students. So it's an absolute honor to be here supporting as a moderator for the session. A few logistics. This session will be recorded and archived on the conference agenda page after this conference is finished for about 1 month. Closed captioning is available. Just click that CC button on the bottom right corner of the screen. The interpretation icon, it's a little globe. That's available in the same area and will provide access to Spanish translation. We will ensure the ASL interpreters are spotlighted along with a PowerPoint presentation and our presenters. Please make sure your volume is muted to avoid background distractions while presenters are speaking. We encourage you to engage with others in the chat, and when possible, keep your camera on so we can see your faces. And with that, Sue, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share our perspective on the high school diploma. We believe the high school diploma is a key to successful transition for our students with disabilities. I want to clarify that the California Transition Alliance has been researching and advocating for the diploma since 2013. So we are going to share some of our research, some of our biases, and what is going on statewide. I would like to introduce my co-presenter, Vicki Shad, who's been a cohort in crime for a very long time. And Vicki?
Hello. Hi, everyone. This is the Sue and Vicki show. Some of you have seen us through the years present together. Sometimes it may be for some of you the first time. One of the things that we share is the passion for transition and the work in this area. And today specifically, as we're talking about making sure that the maximum number of students possible are able to be supported to earn a diploma. As it says on the slide, we're part of the California Transition Alliance. Sue is the president, and I'm the vice president of the organization. If you're interested in learning more, you just go to catransitionalliance.org, and you can see more about our website and our organization there, if that interests you. We have a question on the bottom of this slide, and we've had a little kind of difficulty getting our technology, so we didn't do this in a poll. So you're welcome to put it in chat, or you don't have to. We're just curious if you're a student, a parent, an educator, an administrator, an agency representative, or something else. If you'd like to let us know who you are, please put it in chat now. Thank you for being here with us.
Next slide.
Okay, so these are our goals for the presentation, and we think they are probably consistent with what you're looking at. We want to look at the pathways, we want to how students can earn a diploma. We want to talk about the new regulation and regarding the alternative diploma. What's a course study look like for a diploma? Some of the resources that are available on CDE's website to help us through those things, and the work group report on the alternative pathway. And with that, we're going to go to our next slide, please. Okay, so why is it so important? We hope that by the time that you get done with this session, if you didn't already know why it's so important for a youth to have a diploma versus a certificate of completion, we hope that by the end of this time you will. Next slide, please. Thank you to those of you who are putting your information in chat.
The other thing that we're interested in is what you hope you learn by attending this presentation. So if you could add that to the chat, we'll visit that at the end of the presentation. So one of the things we need to do is say, well, how are we doing? Let's examine the 2022 data. The high school graduation rate with a diploma, standard diploma, for the state rate for the 4th and 5th year cohort is 87.4% of all students are earning a diploma. For the students with disabilities, that number drops to 75.2%. So we still have a ways to go. The dropout rate for students with disabilities is 14%. The employment rates for students with disabilities versus their non-disabled peers, based on national data from the Office of Disability Employment Policy, when you look at ages 16 to 19, remember, most of those students are still in school. The youth with disabilities are employed at the rate of 29% when compared to their non-disabled peers at the rate of 37%. For ages 20 to 24, the rate of disabilities of students who are or youth who are employed is 50% compared to 72%. The other thing that we talk about in transition is employment and post-secondary education and training. For the students who are in education in the state of California, the college going rate for all students is 63%. So out of all the students who attend school, 63% choose to go to college directly out of high school. Of those, 53% start at the community college and 31% start at the universities. For the students with disabilities, that number drops to 41%. And of those, 81% start at the community college and 10% start at the universities. It's also important to note that we have opportunity youth in the state of California, and the New Ways to Work did a really good report on opportunity youth. Those are the students who leave school and they're no longer in school or the workplace. And that statewide is 11%, and that's for all students. So we've got some work to do in the area of helping kids make successful transitions. Next slide. So what happens to you when you lack a diploma? Well, there's a personal impact, a loss of confidence and optimism. You may experience doubts and negative perceptions of self-worth. You lack the minimum qualifications for jobs, and you face employer bias. You don't qualify for some types of financial aid for post-secondary education. You don't meet the minimum qualifications for post-secondary education and training. And you question why you should stay in school if you can't earn a diploma like most of your peers. So in summary, you face barriers to achieve successful outcomes, and you end up in jobs that are in danger of becoming automated and impacted by artificial intelligence. Next slide. This slide is a graphic that shows the biggest bubble of jobs where it is, they have low wages and have the highest potential of being impacted by automation and artificial intelligence. And most of the jobs that youth can access when they do not have a diploma is in this quadrant. And as you can see, this is an area where these jobs lead to poverty, and they lead to challenges in finding other opportunities because you don't have that diploma. So you can't fill out a job application and go to work. Next slide. So the lack of a diploma is a barrier to employment and post-secondary education. I see it as a ticket. 90% of employers prefer to hire youth with a diploma. 30% of jobs are low-skilled and susceptible to automation. Those are the ones that are available to people without a diploma. 66% of jobs require a diploma and post-secondary education and training. And in terms of college and university, the community colleges allow you to enter without a diploma. Universities frequently require a diploma, and there are waivers and exceptions. But FAFSA eligibility for financial aid requires a high school diploma or GED type diploma, unless you are a student with significant intellectual disabilities who participates in a CTP program, and that's a college transition program. Next slide. We want all students to leave school prepared for employment, and preparation needs to start young. We have, in doing the career guidance and counseling with students, I've come to the conclusion that there are 3 variables that a student needs to be able to set a goal for their future. One of them is a sense of hope, that sense of optimism about their future. There's something out there for me. Why would I ever develop a plan for my future if I didn't believe there's nothing for me? The second one is a sense of confidence. I really need to believe in myself. I need to believe I am confident, I'm capable of doing something. If I don't believe I've got the skills to do anything, why would I bother setting a goal for myself? And the third one is trust. I need to know that the resources I need to be able to achieve my goals are available to me. So if I have hope and I have confidence, but I don't have financial resources or transportation or living situations or the personal support I need to achieve my goals, then why set a goal? So for some students, that setting a goal is something where they see it as, I'm going to fail, and therefore I don't want to set a goal. And that is challenging for us as we work with students. So our programs need to instill hope and confidence, and we need to work towards having adequate resources. Next slide. You know, we are experiencing a tsunami of change in the area of transition. In 2013, when we started this work, when we compare it to 2022, let's look at some of the changes that have happened. 2013, we created plans for students, and they only had a menu of services, and it's of these 5 things, which one do you want to do? Oh, you want to do that? Well, I'm sorry, that's not on our list of services. And now we're talking person-centered plans, and we're talking focusing on assets and finding ways to help young people achieve their dreams. In 2013, schools were 100% siloed, and so were agencies. And now we're looking at inclusion. We are looking at students being general ed students who receive special ed services. We're looking at collaboration with those post-secondary agencies that provide support and transition. In 2013, we had watered down expectations, and now one of the themes you'll hear today is we are finding ways to provide every student the opportunity to learn and develop standards. In 2013, we said, you know what, we're going to start talking transition at age 16. Now we're saying, wow, we need to start at preschool or even before with parents. In 2013, once a student with significant cognitive disabilities left school, they went to sheltered work. Now we're looking at competitive integrated employment. We had certificates of completion for some. Now we're really focusing on more students having a diploma and preparing for college. In 2013, we begged employers for work experience. And now major corporations have inclusive workforce divisions within their Department of Human Resources. Recently, the Alliance sponsored two panels that had employers from major corporations talk about what their practices are for engaging people in inclusive workforces. In 2013, we were struggling to figure out effective accommodations. In 2022, accessibility is built into technology. Those accommodations are built into computers, they're built into tablets, they're built into phones. So students have more access to technological support than they ever had before. In 2013, the K-12 destination was the diploma. And now we're looking at the diploma as playing a role in workforce preparation that starts with the pre-K-12 system and goes to college and careers. Next slide. So how do students earn diplomas in the state of California? First of all, it needs to be clarified. Every school district has local control over what they require for their diploma. So one option is that you earn a diploma based on local education agency requirements. The second one is you earn a local education diploma with waivers and accommodations. And the third one is something we're going to explore a little bit. You earn a high school diploma using state requirements instead of your local requirements. And we're going to explain that in future slides. And the fourth one is the alternative pathway for students with significant cognitive disabilities using ed code language related to alternative means for earning a diploma. Next slide.
So for those of you that may have just joined us, you see these two twins here, Sue and Vicki. I'm Vicki. I'm the one that's kind of looking blurry over there with my head tilted in sideways. And Sue is the one that's doing the majority of the presentation. And I'm just coming in now and then. So not to be confused, even though it may say Vicki Shad on your screen, that Sue is the person that is doing the presentation, the bulk of the presentation. So hearing what you've heard so far about the diploma and reasons why students need it and what's going on is there just a little thing popped up on the screen about changing to both of our names. Thanks, that was cute. Is we'd like you to rate yourself on these issues. In chat, please put, if this level of awareness about the issues around a diploma is new to you, rate yourself a 1. If you've heard about the issues around a diploma, but want to learn more, rate yourself a 2. If you're knowledgeable about the issues around a diploma, then you would rate yourself a 3. Thank you. We see some of them coming in, and we'll wait a few minutes till some more of you get in.
So many of you are levels 1 and 2, and you know, this is brand new legislation. It started June 22. So if you heard about it and want to learn more, that's okay. And if it's new to you, well, it's new to everyone as far as the alternative diploma pathway.
Okay, thank you for putting that in and giving us a little bit of information about who's out there. So you see these hands, this fist and hands. So as we go through this next 45 minutes or so with you, we want to make sure that you take care of yourself. You know, we've gotten used to Zoom now and being in front of our computers for longer periods of time, but we want to make sure, you know, take time, do some finger exercises, make your circles, you know, take some time to stretch your hands and to roll your neck around and your shoulders and whatever you need to do to make sure that you're comfortable as we're going through this. We want to make sure that you don't forget to look out for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so the report defines students into 3 groups, and these are students with disabilities that we're talking about. And the first group are students with significant cognitive disabilities who also take the California Alternative Assessment. So these are the kids with the most intense need who require extensive support, and that they are often in more self-contained settings, not always, but sometimes. Then the second group of students are your more typical students. They're your students who need moderate level of support. They usually get it through individualized academic instruction. They're working towards grade level standards. They're getting some accommodations, and they're working. So there's a lot of the students that are in that category. Those students tend to sometimes can benefit from a district using the state level criteria for a diploma, which you're going to hear about a little bit more as we go through. And then the third group of students are where the majority of students with disabilities are. It's about 75% of the students. And those are students who are earning their diplomas through the local graduation requirement. They're working on academic grade level standards. They're getting accommodations. They're doing the same coursework, state and local. So that's kind of how we're going to be looking at this, is these three groups of students in relationship to earning diplomas. Next slide, please.
The work group recommended that instead of creating this different pathways for different categories of students, that the state should create only one brand new pathway, because there are already other pathways that existed. So earning a local diploma meeting the LEA requirements is A. Earning a local diploma with waivers and accommodations, but meeting the LEA requirements is another way. And earning a high school diploma using state requirements and waiving local requirements is the third way. And then the alternative diploma pathway is the only one that was really addressed, and we needed a new pathway for those students because they have significant cognitive disabilities and traditionally earned the certificate of completion.
And it's the pathway that's alternative, not the diploma. And that's a distinction you'll hear more about as we go.
Okay, next slide. So the summary of the California Department of Education report to the state legislature is in this website on this slide. And the work group concluded that in lieu of creating a set of new alternative pathways, other than the pathway for students with significant cognitive disabilities, the state should increase access to the full range of pathway options already provided to all students, and in some cases afforded to specifically named student groups. This includes better access and support for students with disabilities to meet existing state and local requirements for earning a regular diploma, and the allowance for some students with disabilities to earn a diploma through meeting state requirements for graduation only. The work group warned that creating separate pathways for students with disabilities could lead to the perpetuation of existing silos between general ed and special ed, and exclusion of students with disabilities in rigorous high school coursework and post-secondary opportunities. Next slide. Next slide. Did we freeze?
She says 1 minute.
So the federal definition of the high school diploma is what we needed to pay attention to. The federal definition of the high school diploma is awarded to the preponderance of students in the state, fully aligned with state standards or a higher diploma, not aligned to alternative academic standards, does not include a GED, a certificate of completion, a certificate of attendance, or similar less credential, such as a diploma based on meeting IEP goals. The vast majority of students with disabilities should have access to the same high quality academic coursework as other students in the state. Next slide. The certificate of completion is not a diploma. Current practice is that many LEAs issue the certificate of completion as an alternative to the diploma. There are no student performance expectations related to the certificate. The diploma requires you complete courses, you achieve standards. None of that applies to the certificate. One of the criteria for earning a certificate is you're aged out of the system. And there's little or no value in those post-school environments. If you think of school as preparation for that next environment, employers don't value it, and it has no implication for financial aid or attending universities and colleges. Next slide. Just for your information, and we're not going to go through this because we're covering it in a different way. This is the actual language in the Ed code. So this PowerPoint is going to be available to you, and it is on in our, the Alliance has a booth, and it's posted in the booth too. So next slide. So what are the existing pathways in the state of California? When we talk about the state requirements, the state of California has a list of courses you are required to take to earn a standard diploma in the state of California. Local education agencies can say, in addition to those requirements, we want students to have other courses, or we want the students to have community service as a piece of it, or some sort of senior project, or some additional requirements in order to earn their diploma. So right now, the state of California says you have to take 3 English courses, and so for many of the school districts, they've said, we want all of our students to have the A to G courses. Those are the courses that prepare you to go to college, to the university, directly out of high school. So the A to G courses require 4 courses of English. The state requirement is 2 courses of math. A to G courses are 3 courses of math, 2 courses of science across the board. The state requires 3 courses in social science, and A to G requires 2 courses in social science. There are 3 categories that are called electives. One of them is visual and performing art, foreign language, and career technical education classes. Visual and the state says you need to take one of these 3 electives. A to G courses say you must have 1 year of visual or performing arts. You must have 2 years of foreign language with the same language. And then a career tech ed course is also allowed. And then the state requires 2 years of PE, and that's not alluded to in the A to G courses. So, but there are exceptions. And one of the things that we found out is in doing the research, there are some students where it is required by the state that the local education agency waive local graduation requirements and issue a diploma based on the state coursework. These are students that have traditionally been involved: foster youth, members of military family, homeless youth, and English language learners. We suggested adding students with disabilities to that list. And the report says, you know what, that's a reasonable option. So for that level 2 student who needs extra support and maybe a little extra time but can earn the diploma, it is an option for the IEP team to waive local graduation requirements and require that it's just A to G, require that it's just the state requirements. That does require board approval. And one of the places to look to find out if the board approval is there is one of the requirements is that the board approves setting it up as a waiver. The other final category is that the local education board with the LEA and active involvement of parents, teachers, and administrators can adopt alternative means for pupils to complete the prescribed course of study. That includes practical demonstration of skills, supervised work experience, career technical ed classes, independent study, credits earned at post-secondary institutions. Most of the students who qualify for these alternative means are on alternative education programs. So the IEP team has choices to make. And they can say, this student could earn the diploma if it was based on the state requirements as opposed to the A to G requirements. And as an IEP team, we recommend that this student be have a waiver for those local requirements. Next slide. Is this you?
You were gonna talk a little bit about it, and then I was gonna add to it.
Okay. Just for your information, again, we're not going to go into it in graphic detail, but I pulled the ed code having to do with the high school coursework and graduation requirement exceptions and alternatives. And so this is in the slides, and if you want to consult it and look at it, feel free.
So it is also on the bottom of the previous slide. She speaks to these groups, but I really want to stress, if you're not aware of this, that this can increase the number of students that receive special education services with disabilities graduation rate just by being aware and implementing these things. 25% of foster youth have IEPs. So they have this different criteria that can be used. Kids in military families, kids who are homeless. If you just pay attention and know the students that you're working with, and if they fall in any of these categories, it's a tool for you to be able to help them earn their diploma because of something that's already existing in the law that isn't anything special that has to be done except for being on top of it and implementing it. Next slide, please.
That's you.
Next slide, please.
That's what's the next one? Okay. This slide just shows the difference between the class requirements. For example, the English requirements are 3 years versus 4 years. Math, the state says 2 years of math, including algebra 1. A to G requires advanced algebra, 2 to 3 dimensional geometry. Social science, the state requires 3 years, US history and geography, world history and culture and geography, 1 semester of American government, 1 semester of economics. And the A to G courses require world and European history, cultures, geography, US history, and 1 semester of civics or American government. In science, we're looking at the difference between biology and physical science to biology, chemistry, and physics. We've already talked about the differences in the electives requirements, and PE is required. So every school district is required to meet those minimum course standard requirements. But in addition, they can make, they can say, we're going to make the English requirement, but we're going to use the A to G requirements for our English. So, so that is a local choice, a local decision. But everybody has to have English, math, social science, science, electives, PE, and that's not negotiable. Next slide. So the work group recommended that the students should, the only brand new pathway to be created was for significant students with significant cognitive disabilities who did not have a pathway to the diploma, and that we emphasize the existing traditional pathways. It does require the board waives the local graduation requirements.
So remember, it said what she said. After a lot of research, and the committee felt there was only one alternative pathway needed, and yet we still have so many people around the state who weren't or aren't using the state or the CTE pathways for students. So we're not saying that it's the local pathway or the alternative diploma pathway. We have these others that are in place that in many places are being underutilized or not recognized. Next slide, please.
So currently there's no existing statute that prohibits the IEP team from planning for and allowing a student with a disability to only be expected to meet the minimum state requirements to earn a high school diploma. However, it is the discretion of the LEA to determine if they want to add additional requirements for their students, as well as if they will allow some students to be exempted from local requirements. Translation: this is an existing course of study available to other populations of students with IEPs. And the reference to that quote is the report, page 27. Next slide. So we've got the issue of, should the high school diploma say alternative diploma on it? Would that make it a lesser than diploma that would be just perceived to be the same as a certificate of completion? And we said, no, we want the diploma to be the exact same for everyone. If you earn the diploma by completing the alternative pathway to a diploma, you're meeting all of the requirements for achieving the alternative diploma as defined by the federal government. But the place to put that is in the transcript, not on the diploma. Eligibility for the university is not based on a diploma, it's based on transcript. And so this chart shows the difference between a diploma and transcript. The student has completed a specific course of study. That is in the diploma, and that's on the transcript. The specific coursework a student has completed is not listed on the diploma. It is in the transcript. Grades or achievement levels of students achieved is not on the diploma. It is in the transcript. And the student has a disability or an exceptional learning need is neither on the diploma nor legally can be on the transcript. So I sought clarification of this because it confused me a little bit. And the Office of Civil Rights came out with this in 2006. A transcript may not disclose that a student has received special ed or related services or has a disability. A transcript may indicate a student took classes with a modified or alternative ed curriculum. This is consistent with the transcript's purpose of informing post-secondary institutions and prospective employers of a student's academic achievements. Transcript notations concerning enrollment in different classes, course content, and curriculum by students with disabilities would be consistent with any similar transcript designation for classes, such as advanced placement, honors, or remedial instruction. This is really an important piece of this puzzle because if you list the alternative pathway course of study as the means of achieving the diploma, the student is eligible to stay in school up to age 22, according to federal law. And it's only because that exception is listed in the transcript that they're eligible for that free and appropriate education, because state law says that if a student earns a diploma, they're no longer eligible to stay in school. But the alternative diploma pathway is an exemption to that state law. Next slide. Okay. One of the Every Student Succeeds Act says students with only the most significant cognitive disabilities should receive the alternative diploma only if they've taken the state alternative assessments, and no more than 1% of students graduating in a state should receive an alternative diploma. Next slide. So the federal definition for an alternative diploma is students with the most significant cognitive disabilities in the cohort assessed using alternative assessment and awarded a state-defined alternative diploma that is standards-based, aligned with state requirements for a regular high school diploma, obtained within the time period for which we offer free and appropriate public education, and shall not include a student awarded a GED, certificate of completion, certificate of attendance, or similar less credential. Next slide. So what is the state of California? do. In June 2022, Ed Code language was added in section 51225.3 that says a new diploma for graduation is now available to students with significant cognitive disabilities. And the procedure is that before the student commences grade 10, the student's IEP team determines whether or not the student may, and notifies the parents whether the student may be eligible to graduate with a diploma. The student is required to take the California Alternative Assessment in grade 11 and is required to complete standards aligned coursework and meet standard statewide minimum coursework requirements. So we need to develop plans to offer all students in high school and the transition age programs the high school diploma that is compliant with IDEA. Next slide. I'm sorry, I took yours.
No, that's fine. Okay, so this is a graphic of what is the current practice in a lot of places, a lot of local education agencies. So we just want you to look at this, that how the decision is often made in third grade to take students off an academic path and put them on a functional skills path. And maybe it's for good reason, maybe it's for good intentions, but what we're doing is denying students opportunity to learn. And what we're also not doing is we're not using UDL, universal learning design. We're not using differentiated instruction. We're not using accommodations to their maximum. And then when it gets to high school, we come back on and we're wanting to have them be able to earn a diploma, and they need to be able to earn a diploma when we've denied them the opportunity, or we've put them in a setting where we're saying that kids in that setting can't earn a diploma. So please think about this, the food for thought there in the corner. What are we doing in the third grade? Next slide, please.
There was a Supreme Court ruling, Andrew versus Douglas, that came out in 2017 that reinforces the fact that students should be expected to meet more than the school should be required to meet more than the de minimis standards, which means that you got some growth, so you're okay. And the court said that merely more than de minimis progress from year to year can hardly be said to have offered an education at all. For students with disabilities, receiving instruction that aims so low would be tantamount to sitting idly, waiting for the time when they were old enough to drop out. IDEA demands more. It requires an education program reasonably calculated to enable a child to make progress in light of the child's circumstances. And so we have to be ambitious when we talk about these standards. Next slide.
We're not going to ask you to reflect something more here because due to time, we want to at least get to a few of the questions that are in that currently in the chat, and we're hoping to have time to get there. So thank you for going to this slide.
Okay, these one of the things that happened is that colleges started developing programs for the IDD population. And this is a list of the college programs that currently exist in California. There is AB 447 that is saying that we are taking, that we are proposing legislation to expand the list of the universities that provide this kind of support to students. And this list came from thinkcollege.net, and I strongly recommend you check out that website because it has wonderful resources for the schools that are trying to prepare students for life after high school that includes college and university. Next slide. One of the things that we have learned is that youth with intellectual disabilities who have had post-secondary education experience are 26 times more likely to be successfully employed upon completing vocational rehab services and earn a 73% higher weekly wage than their peers without the PSE experience. California Department of Education responded to this compelling data by funding college to career programs. The students who attend the college to career programs are the students who leave school with a categorization of IDD, who are struggling, who are earning a certificate of completion, who have not had the opportunity to learn academic standards. But once they got to the college, they are able to pass college courses, earn industry certificates, and go to work. They have one of the highest rates of persistence for all student groups. They're offered personal support, guidance on selecting classes, accommodations, and at the university levels, intensive reading instruction. Does this imply that maybe our expectations for these students were too low and that we have to adjust our expectations based on new research and new learning? Next slide. The definition of the alternative diploma pathway is laid out here again, just to make sure that we understand the steps to earning the pathway. Next slide. Again, this is the language, and we just put that in there so you would have a reference to it later. Next slide. We're hearing a lot from parents, and they have a lot of concerns. They're concerned that the certificate of completion limits future opportunities. There's no reason to continue the adult transition age if there's no chance to earn the diploma. What if the student didn't take the alternative assessment in the 11th grade? Does that mean they're out of luck? And that's something that the districts are challenged with. And is there any way around Algebra 1? The answer to that is yes. There have been waivers for a long time. They continue to exist. Next slide. How did we get here? Well, one of the things is that education prepares you for the next environment. And the next environment for this population of students has been shifting. We went from being institutionalized to in the community. We went to sheltered workshops. Now they're considered obsolete, to expecting more people to live independently and to work in competitive integrated employment. And that is a huge shift on the part of the adult services. And it's a shift on what we are preparing students for. And we're finding more and more of these students are capable of achieving competitive integrated employment. So each element of transition led to greater inclusion in the community and improve our understanding. Next slide. What steps are required to implement the alternative pathway? Well, the first thing I would do if I were you is look at local policy. And it's required to waive local mandates for earning the diploma and stipulate the alternative pathway is available to students with significant cognitive disabilities or not completing the coursework. And if the LEA takes the position there's only one diploma standard, reference policies for the other students who have alternative standards, including foster care, military families, and alternative ed. Next slide. Review board policy regarding graduation requirements, examine expectations and challenges, provide training for all teachers in the area of inclusion and universal design for learning, recognize the importance of the K-12 system that lays the foundation for successful positive transition outcomes. We don't start preparing for transition when a student turns 16. That child starts in early childhood. Ensure the integration of transition mandates in the planning process and collaborate closely with regional centers and the Department of Rehabilitation. Next slide. This is you.
So this slide is talking about how to go about, it gives you kind of a template for creating your course of study and projecting out all the way through the 18 to 22-year-old programs, what you're going to do. So it's just an example of setting a format to set it up in. Next slide, please.
One of the things that's been a challenge in the conversations about how to start an alternative pathway is what common core standards should we use? And some suggestions are take a look at the Common Core state standards for what students need to learn at each grade level. Implement the Common Core state standards for students with disabilities requires changing in organization and attitude and mindsets. Methods and approaches can be addressed by challenging to step up to more rigorous standards. One of the things that I'm hearing is how can we have a standard so low they can get it? The other thing is, how do you teach effectively so they can achieve higher standards? And other challenges is what kind of professional development teachers need, who will pay for the training. And I can tell you that there are committees throughout the state that are working on these issues. Next slide.
Okay, as I'm gonna talk about these next 2 or 3 slides together, Sue, I'm gonna open the chat here so that you can look at and see what questions we might be able to get to before we run out of time. Okay, and then you can just scroll like that with it. Okay, so the next 3 slides are all focusing on the same thing. On this one about accommodations, a modification, modified curriculum. Using UDL, are we using differentiated instruction? We make sure we're maximizing the IEP and using the accommodations used for the student to level the playing. Are we using accessibility features? There are so many accessibility features on cell phones and computers and tablets and things today. Are we differentiated instruction? Implementing a multi-tier system of support for academics, behavior, and emotional. Okay,
Vicki, I think you're a bit far from the microphone, so you're cutting out at the moment. We heard you perfectly.
oh, you're not able to hear me? Can you hear me
Just-
now?
Yes.
Yes, I
Sorry.
hear you now too.
Down or something. I have a. Are we modifying the curriculum as to the indicators in the name? We did. In the State Department, under the assessment section, you'll see this on that next slide. Talks about on the next slide, it talks about accessibility resources. And one of the things that we want you to focus on is the accessibility matrix parts and definitions. And this, what is so good about this is that this can be used for instruction and local assessment. It lends itself to that very, very simply and uniformly, and not just statewide assessment. So part 1 is about universal tools. What kind of universal tools are there for all students that don't require a special accommodation, that can students with IEPs and 504s and everybody can have? And then it goes to what kind of designated supports are needed, then accommodations, then instructional supports and resources for alternative assessments, and then unlisted ones, things that people need that may not be on the list. So we want to make sure that you have that link and that you might want to put in your notes, the accessibility matrix. That is a useful tool for you to familiarize yourself. 1, it'll help you prepare students better for state testing, but 2, it gives you a tool to use in your local districts for instruction and local assessments. Next slide, please.
I think the other thing is that those accessibility resources give tools for students to advocate for themselves and to accommodate themselves. So it's really important. One of the things that's extremely confusing is that in Ed Code language, it says students with intellectual disability or exceptional needs qualify if they take the California alternative assessment. And one of the things that we put in here is when you look at the guidance for the individual program and the decision-making confirmation sheet, that is where you get to the point that this is only for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And that's based on federal guidelines. And that's not something we can change. So next slide. This is the criteria to use to participate in alternative assessments, which leads to the eligibility to be in the alternative pathway. And just want to make sure that you know this resource exists. Next slide. This is just reviewing again the alternative assessment system, and the ELA and math assessments are administered in grades 3, 8, and 11, and the science assessments are grades 5, 8, and high school. And one of the big challenges is, what if you're in the 12th grade? You didn't take the assessment. Do you still qualify? The state is working on finding ways to help with that question, and it has not been resolved yet. Next slide. Some other suggestions are, when you want to talk about developing strategies to align instructional goals with state standards, there are resources to do that. There's a universal design for learning, inclusion in general ed, project-based learning, contextual learning. There are consultation with general ed teachers and what their curriculum is, and the inclusion in general ed courses. And there are other tools having to do with the alternative assessments and dynamic learning maps and other things. Career technical ed, career readiness standards are wonderful, and you can adopt some commercially prepared standards-based curriculum. Next slide. This is just an example of the way the standards are broken out with the Common Core connector standards. Next slide. And we are at the end.
Now, we know throughout the session, there have been different things in the chat where we have not been able to look at the chat and do the presentation. So if there are, Sue, did you see any burning questions that you were there, or do you have any burning questions out there that you want to re-put in chat right now, or Sue, that you saw should respond to?
I didn't see a lot of questions. I saw a lot of comments.
Can I read out one or two maybe for you?
That would be wonderful. Go for it.
So Dr. Johnson asked, for a student with more significant needs who would benefit from remaining eligible for special education until age 22, what will the implications of awarding an alternative pathway diploma be?
The alternative pathway to the diploma exempts the student from the state requirement that a diploma ends K-12 education. It allows you to continue up to age 22.
Thank you, Sue.
That is a federal rule. So if a student is in the alternative pathway program and they're earning a diploma through the alternative pathway, they can stay in school up to age 22.
Yes, Leanne, that is the best way. And there's some resources we gave you to do that.
Can I read out another one to you?
Sure.
This is in reference to the board waivers. Does the board have to approve this waiver for each individual student? For example, if I want to waive the language requirement for one student, do I need to get approval for that specific waiver for that specific student?
That's going to be a local decision, but the board policy for the students who are in foster care, and it started when we had a high degree of mobility. So a student in foster care moved into a district too late to meet those high school graduation requirements that were the district requirements, but could meet the state requirements. They built an exception for those students into Ed Code. So your district has a policy for these exceptions. I would go there first, because if you have a standard policy and these students are included in that policy, you don't have to go back for every individual. You just have to prove the IEP team concluded this is in the best interest for the student.
So before they cut us off, Sarah, we want to say thank you to you for helping us. We really appreciate it. We couldn't have gotten through this without you. For all of you who have participated, we hope that you've gained some knowledge and some resources that will help you as you go forward. We're all in this and we're learning as we go. And keep going, keep working for the students to be able to earn diplomas. And thank you for having us. And perhaps we'll see you another time. Bye-bye.
For anyone who didn't get your questions answered, we'll work on getting back to you individually. Do feel free to reach out to us at SIP, though. We'll always want to be a source of information and connect you with resources like Vicki and Sue. Thank you to everyone in attendance for your allyship for students with disabilities and their families. It is our mission to grow our educational system to innovate, include, and impact outcomes positively for all, from birth to adulthood and beyond. All this presentation slides and resources can be accessed from the session description on the VFAIR's agenda page. Be sure to join us in the next breakout session with DJ Diamond. Also, you can connect in the social lounge with like-minded attendees. Post on social media using the hashtag SIPCon 2023. If you go to the agenda, that should take you through to the next events. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. And thank you again to Vicki and Sue from the Transition Alliance.
We do have things posted on our booth, so please go to the booth too.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.